If you're just getting started with learning German, you probably have a ton of questions. Where should you even start? What kind of resources, books, apps, websites, etc. should you use? How can you level up your German skills fast without wasting any time? It can be quite overwhelming, not because there isn't enough resources out there, but because there are just too many and it's so easy to get lost in this massive sea of information. If you feel me on this one, give this video a like, because by the end of today's video, you'll have more clarity on where and how to start learning German successfully. If you're new to this channel, herzlich willkommen. My name is Salome and I specialize in helping people who are relocating to Germany, Switzerland, or Austria to learn German from absolutely zero knowledge all the way up to becoming conversational. So if you are a total beginner, don't worry, I got you. I upload new German lessons every single week in plain English, so if that's something you want more of, then I would love to welcome you in my amazing YouTube family. Hit the subscribe button and the bell now to be notified whenever I upload something new. Alright, let's get started with the most common question. What should I even start with as a total beginner? Unlike it's taught in most traditional language lessons where you would normally start with learning how to introduce yourself, etc., I actually recommend starting with pronunciation first and foremost. I've seen a ton of people start the traditional academic way and then end up not having the confidence to speak a word even after a couple of months of learning. You build up the confidence to speak by getting a good grasp of the German pronunciation first. Why? Because people will have a much easier time understanding you, and let me tell you, it's a huge confidence booster when people don't switch to English right away when you say something or don't ask you to repeat yourself over and over again. So what are some difficult sounds in German? The most common sounds that people struggle with in the beginning are the Umlaute. Those are the three vowels U, O, and A with the two dots on top of them. We call them Ü, Ö, and Ä. Especially Ü and Ö can be tricky if your native tongue, like English for example, doesn't have these sounds. So a good way of practicing Ü and Ö is by starting with sounds that do exist in English and then transitioning into those Umlaute. Let me show you what I mean by that. So for Ü, you want to start with the E sound. Why? Because your tongue position in E and Ü is exactly the same. Then the only thing you'll need to do is moving your lips to a U shape. So we go from E to Ü. EU, EU, Ü. For Ö, you want to start with an E sound. Same here, the tongue position is the same as in Ö. So we go from E to Ö. EU, EU, Ö. If you are having a hard time with the German umlaute, do give this a bit of time and practice regularly, ideally in front of a mirror, so you can check if you're doing things right. The next letter combination that is very tricky to master is CH. In German, there are two ways of pronouncing this, either CH like in ich or CH like in acht. For both of these sounds, I've heard countless variations of how people would pronounce these. In order to pronounce the sh sound correctly, you want to pull your lips to the side and then press air through a tiny gap between your teeth. Sh, sh, ish, ish. So it's not ich, at least not in high standard German. The other CH sound, which we call ach laut, is produced here in the back of your throat. Acht, acht. So it's not acht, but acht. When you are practicing the sound, a good way to get started is through gargling water in order to activate this part of your throat. Now you might be asking yourself, when do we use the ich sound and when the ach sound? Good question, and I hope you have your pen and notebook ready because you definitely want to mark this down. So the ich sound appears after I, Ö, Ü, ei, oi, and oi, and also the noun ending chen. The ach laut occurs after a, o, u, and au. Another sound, especially as an English native speaker, you'll need to pay attention to is the German Z. In German, Z is pronounced as a TS, so it's a very harsh sound. Ts, ts, ts. Like an zwei, zehn, or die Zeit. So it's not zwei, zehn, and Zeit, but zwei, zehn, and Zeit. I have a ton of videos on German pronunciation on this channel that I will link below that you can check out next to help you set a good foundation in your speaking skills. Next question I get a lot is, what are the basic phrases and vocabulary I should learn first? Well, that totally depends on what you're planning to use German for. Most of my students either are planning to relocate here or travel to Germany, Switzerland, and Austria regularly, so the intention is to put the language to use. In this case, I would start with vocabulary and phrases that are going to help you with interactions you'll encounter in daily life. Again, this is quite unconventional advice. As a language teacher, the academic route starts with being able to introduce yourself and learn about various grammar topics first. While grammar is important, I do also think it holds people back from gaining the confidence to speak because you're being just too much in your head. As a language learner myself, I speak English, French, Mandarin, and Cantonese as a foreign language. I always want to make sure that I overcome the fear of having small daily life interactions in the target language first before diving into the intricacies. So what are some of the situations you encounter in your daily life? Start with making a set of useful phrases, practice the pronunciation, and then go out there and apply what you've learned. Important tip here, don't use Google Translate. My go-to dictionary or translation tool is DeepL. It's way more accurate than Google Translate. I also have a ton of videos with practical phrases for daily life here on this channel, like for example, how to order and pay in a cafe, survival phrases for travelers, practical phrases for interactions in the gym, useful phrases for your apartment hunt if you are planning to relocate here, how to make a doctor's appointment, how to make small talk in order to break the ice with German natives, and if you want a little bit of everything, I've recently also uploaded a video with 100 practical phrases for daily life. I will link all of these videos that I've mentioned below as well for you to check out. Next question, which apps, websites, or other resources do you recommend? Now, to be very frank with you, I think in the very beginning, less is more. You don't want to overload yourself with too much stuff and get overwhelmed. The most important thing you will need as a beginner learner is a clear structure and a step-by-step roadmap so you don't get drowned in the gigantic sea of information that is out there because you can just focus on what is important. For this, I recommend the German Fluency Academy, which is my signature program to help total beginners go from zero knowledge all the way up to getting conversational. I've put a lot of thought and effort into building out this course in order to ensure you're only learning what's necessary to make progress quickly. If you want to check it out, the best way to get started is with my free 60-minute taster lesson. I'll have that linked below as well, and I would love to see you there. Now, in terms of apps and websites, I do have some recommendations. For building up vocabulary, I recommend Memrise. For looking up words, Lingri or leo.org are my go-to online dictionaries. For translating, as mentioned previously, DeepL is the best tool, and for watching movies or TV shows, LingoPie is great. It is basically a website that helps you learn German by watching German TV shows and movies with subtitles. There are lots of German shows and movies to choose from, which definitely makes learning a lot more fun and interesting. I have all of these resources linked below as well, and if you want more recommendation or an in-depth review of various apps, I made a whole video for that as well. But do remember, less is more. Next question. Should you use formal or informal German for daily life? Now, this absolutely depends on the situation, and there is a lot of cultural nuance around this topic. With time, you'll learn how to read different situations. But my main piece of advice for a beginner is to stick to the formal. You'll definitely be on the safe side when interacting with strangers. I've also made a whole video about this topic that will help you to understand more about when to use the formal versus the informal you. Short summary of that is that we use the formal you with strangers and the informal you with family members, friends, and children. What are the most important grammatical rules in German? So as mentioned before, there is no way around learning a new language without learning grammar as well. However, it should not overwhelm you or even worse, hold you back from learning the language. Start with basic things in order to understand how to structure a sentence. So what are these basic topics? Let's dive in. Number 1, personal pronouns. So personal pronouns are these little words that we use to speak about ourselves, to someone else, or about people and things. In English, those are words like I, you, he, she, it, and so on. The German counterparts are ich, du, er, sie, es, wir, ihr, sie, and sie. Now, if you paid close attention, you might have noticed that I said sie 3 times. Sie for she, sie for they, and sie with a capital S for the formal you. So how do we know which sie we're talking about? Good question. This depends on the verb conjugation. So for each of these pronouns, you'll have a different verb ending so that you'll know exactly which pronoun is being used in a sentence. Let's take a look at an example with the verb wohnen, which means to live. Ich wohne, du wohnst, sie, es wohnt, wir wohnen, ihr wohnt und sie wohnen. Sie as in they and sie as in the formal you do both have the en ending, which means the second clue you'll get is based on the context. If you're talking about a group of people, you'll know that the pronoun is they. If you are talking to someone or someone is addressing you directly, you'll know that the pronoun is the formal you. Next important grammar topic is about the sentence structure. I know this can cause a lot of headache because it doesn't always work translating a sentence in English word for word into German. But it doesn't have to be that complicated. The most important rule that you need to know about the German sentence structure is that the verb goes on position 2 in statement sentences. Zum Beispiel, ich lerne Deutsch. I'm learning German. So far, so good. This statement sentence has the same order as in English. But what about today I'm learning German? In English, you would put the time first, right? Today. And then the rest of the sentence remains the same as before. However, in German, the verb goes on position 2 in a sentence, no matter what happens. Knowing this, it therefore should be Heute lerne ich Deutsch. Today learn I German. So what do we learn from this? German grammar is not complicated if you stay consistent with the rules that you learn. Of course, there will always be exceptions, but in terms of sentence structure, it is pretty straightforward. Now, the most important question I get from beginners is, how do I actually get started with learning German? Well, this totally depends on you and your goals. So my recommendation is to get clear on why you are learning German first and foremost. Is it because you need German for day-to-day life, or you're planning to work here, for example, in the medical field, or you want to reconnect to your German roots, be able to communicate with your mother-in-law? Getting clear on your why is definitely very helpful to then decide which course or method is going to be the best for you. Some people might need to pass an exam for visa purposes quickly. Then you might need a more intense course that is solely geared towards exam preparation. Some might want to be able to speak in German in their day-to-day life and need a more practical approach. Other questions that you would need to ask yourself are, do you prefer online lessons because you travel a lot? Maybe you need a self-paced program for better time management and flexibility, or you prefer in-person classes for accountability or getting to know people in your local area. There really is no one-size-fits-all. It all depends on what you want and need. Are you more of a visual learner? Do you learn best with a lot of structure and in an organized way? I definitely recommend researching and checking out different options and then stick to one. Because especially as a beginner, you do want something that is going to build up on what you've previously have learned. It's like building a house. You want to put one stone on top of each other that ideally fit each other in order to build a solid foundation. Jumping between all sorts of different courses or lessons is going to make it difficult to build a good foundation. So for online tutors, I highly recommend checking out Preply. In terms of apps, I already mentioned Memrise. Of course, I also have my own online course, which I recommend if you do want to study with me, since I get this question quite a lot. I do have an online self-paced program for beginners where you will be working with me personally. If you want to join and work with me directly, you can simply apply through the link in the description box below, and I would love to welcome you on board. I will be back next week with another lesson on practical German for you guys, so make sure you are subscribed. Das ist alles für heute. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!